Greetings. There's this phrase, toxic masculinity, and there's no such thing. If it's masculine, it's healthy. The way a bull moose is healthy, the way a ram in the wild is healthy, it's masculine after its species. And it's the same with human beings. If you are male and you're healthy, you are masculine. The problem is people bring all their sloppy definitions into it. They're thinking of, well, some kind of a male behavior that's toxic, and it would be male probably because of the way the brain develops and because of the testosterone levels. That's not masculine. So you see what I'm doing? I'm using the word in a very specific way, and it's a backlash against the self-righteous tribe that is anti-men. So there's this phrase, in my case, white male and white male privilege, and wow, what a racist, what a nasty, what a self-entitled term that is. I mean, from the people who use it. I'm not a white male. You can see my coloration, pretty fair, Northern European. Yeah, you can call me white if you have to be racist about it, but don't call me male, because I'm a man. And I will not have my human maleness and my social masculinity taken from me by reducing it to an animal. That's what it's done. There's this idea of tribalism, and very accurate. I've never really belonged to a tribe, to a group. I've always been kind of an outlier, not socially healthy necessarily, but I'm just not a joiner. So I am more of a watcher. I see these things, and it would be excellent to be a participant as well. That sort of brings me to my real point. I was talking about toxic masculinity as a what is it? As a hate term? George Orwell talked about in 1984. Wow, what a prophetic work that was. Read it if you haven't. Movie, not so much. Read it, and read the appendix, the very last part where he goes on about new speak. The point is hate speak, hate speech, hate speak, new speak, double plus ungood, the way the totalitarians take over the use of language. And that's what's happened. So words have been redefined and meaning has been taken away, so that there's that documentary, if you haven't seen it, it's online, What is a Woman? Very Confucian. Very call a thing by what its name is, by what it is. Name it by what it is. So I don't want to be political, except it's not politics, well, it is, but it's biology, it's common sense. Here's my point. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was the men's movement. And for Christians, there was the Promise Keepers. And for, I won't say non-Christians, but for a broader approach to the culture, it was a men's movement. And this is, if you're young enough, you will have heard about it maybe. But in the late 80s, early 90s, men would, isolated, unemotional, suppressed men would find a way of expressing themselves as men, as male human biological entities in a social situation with emotional needs. And it manifested itself in, say, going into the woods with a bunch of men and having a bonfire and telling stories and beating on drums. And there was a lot of emotion involved in that. Now, I'm old enough to have been old when that was happening, full-grown adults. I wasn't a part of that, but I was aware of it. I knew people, and I watched it. And it was a necessary and healthy movement. And it fizzled and faded away. And it faded away because there was no internet. So there was no follow-through. There was no keeping in touch. There was no community after. Now, that whole thing could happen again. And it would succeed, or it could succeed, because of the internet now. Because internet was 10 years away. One of the fellows who was deep into that movement, well, there's Robert Bly, the poet. He just died recently, like 90 years old, and he was a part of that. B-L-Y, look him up. Some of the videos that he put out they're available. Then there was Robert Moore, Moore, and he died. He had a catastrophic illness and died under quite tragic circumstances not so very long ago. But he was involved in that movement. This is my point. This is what's important. And he was a therapist, a psychological counselor, PhD, and a Jungian. Now, you've heard me mention Jung a few times, talked about the shadow, I recall, and how it's not bad things. It's the things that you reject in yourself, and you put it into another place, and it comes out in your dreams and in your unthinking actions. It has to do with archetypes, Jungian archetypes. And it's a part of depth psychology, which is very interesting. It's one of my paradigms is depth psychology, psychodynamic, and then I'm also a bit of a behaviorist, just in terms of what matters. What matters is what you do in the universe. So my point is, one of the things that Robert Moore pulled together was 4 Jungian archetypes, the 4 major masculine archetypes: king, warrior, magician, lover. You do those 4 things, those 4 aspects of anybody's kind of personality need to be developed. You need to be the leader, the benevolent. You need to have that capacity, that aspect of what and who you are. It needs to be developed. Not always, not every time. You don't always have to be in charge. If there's a collection of kings, not every king is in charge, but they're all kings. And they're judging the worth and the efficacy of things. And they are looking with a benevolent eye to see how things could be better. They're looking to be a blessing in that King Arthur kind of sense of when the king is sick, the land is sick. When the king is healthy, the land is healthy. And it's healthy because the king is overlooking, he's watching, he's anticipating. He sees what needs to be done. And he finds an appropriate way to attempt, because you can't always change everything, but to attempt to improve things. It's not the guy, I'm in charge here, do as I say. That's not what a king, our archetypal aspect of a king is. It is somebody who brings a blessing. So it would be the idea of Christianity, of Jesus. The first coming as meek and mild servant, the second coming as a ferocious warrior, frankly, in terms of the description, and then with a sword to be king. That kind of a king who's loving but just. That's the ideal masculine archetype of the king. The king is a blessing. Okay. The second archetype is the warrior. And that is, there's a job to be done, get it done. You do it. Nothing is in your way. It needs to be done. So you do it. Oh, I have an excuse, so I can't. Hey, the job needs to be done. Now, you can't do everything, but whatever it takes of your energy, you bring it together, you find the way, you get your strategy. You're not a strategist because that's the king, but you get to that strategy and you implement it. You're not an automaton, you're not a golem, just as lurching after unthinkingly, but whatever it takes, and then you have to say within your ethical framework, you get it done. In the Bible, Judges, I think, there's the judge, Ehud, and there's a king of Moab, and the king of Moab is oppressing Israel. The judge, Ehud, makes for himself a sword. I think it's a cubit long, 14, 16 inches long, and he puts it on his left side. And he's an important man. He's the judge of Israel. And he has an appointment with the king of Moab, and he goes in, they have a private conference. Ahab kills the king of Moab, pulls out the sword, stabs him in the guts. And the king of Moab was an exceedingly fat man. It says the blade of the sword went up to the hilt, and the dirt came out. Well, that's fecal matter. That's how deep and, frankly, I wouldn't say viciously, but thoroughly, Ehud, this representative of the God of the Old Testament, took care of business. And that action is praised in the Bible. Here's my point. Mercy, love, kindness, gentleness, loving kindness, yes, but firmness and wrath and bloodiness, absolutely. How do we know? Because that's how the universe is. I'm using these as examples, regardless of your worldview, absolute atheist or whatever it is you are. These stories are deeply instructive because they represent, in some sense, how the world actually is. The world, I have said, and it's self-evident, the world wants you dead. How do you know? Because you die. Well, that doesn't, yeah, it does. It does mean the universe wants you dead. And it moves in the way so that time and entropy conspire to take your life. You wear out. If the universe didn't want you dead, it could find a way to keep you alive. Now, of course, I'm imputing that kind of intelligence, and I'm just using a metaphor, but of course. Now, within that framework, how can we optimize in a world that is fierce? What is sometimes an appropriate response? That warrior's fierceness. So just in the news yesterday, a probably far left liberal, somebody who thinks that people are basically good, somebody who thinks that it's racist if you see a gang on the sidewalk and you cross the street to avoid the gang. Oh, that's racist. No, well, okay. But this fellow got killed last night, stabbed. Apparently didn't want to cross the street to avoid a psycho, obviously psychotic person in the street, and got killed. No warrior. He had no warrior. He was the warrior of words. He would be the name caller of people who disagreed with him. But where it required tactical advantage, he didn't have it. He didn't exercise it. Because the warrior does not always advance. Sometimes the warrior retreats. He's still a warrior. He's living to fight another day. So the Spartans, the 300 who died, they could have retreated. That wasn't the job. The job was to stop the enemy, the Persians. And okay, in that case, it took their lives. The point is not to lose your life. The point is to achieve and accomplish the mission. Mission is top of the list for the warrior. What's the job? Identify it coldly, logically, rationally, not at the expense of everything else, but in that role. So that's the warrior. The king is a blessing. The warrior is an agency. He is the sword of defense, the sword of offense. Magician, the third of the healthy masculine archetypes. This is me. I'm the magician. I was meant to be a lover. It means open up your heart and be an overwhelming blessing. But the circumstances of my upbringing made me flee from that place, where my temperament is. And okay, well, what can I be if I can't be the lover, the gentle? That's what I want to be, but couldn't be. And I didn't really develop that. It's there. You can see it in me that it's there. But okay, well, what can I do? And in the kind of oppressive situation, really not a great place to develop. These things have to develop, and if they're not allowed to develop, they get stunted. So warrior, I was the little one who got physically abused quite a bit. So there was only one place I could go, and that was a magician. So I was the kid who figured things out. You can tell by the way I speak. This is not an affectation. It's not, I don't do this on purpose, the precise way I speak. That was me when I was a little kid, deciding how I was going to present myself to the world. And it's, Professor Vocabulary and the Little Professor and Poindexter, if you know that reference. So it's how things work, and it's fixing things, and it's analyzing, and it's also synthesizing. It's an overall view of the world where you develop paradigms. You're looking for the most efficient, the most efficacious way intellectually to do things. This is the magician channel. I'm not going into the details in really any of these videos, but this is the big picture. This is the paradigm. So I'm not going into the minutia of the four archetypes, but I am going into the overall picture. So the magician, this is why guys like the stats of baseball or football, or they know everything there is to know about firearms, or every tank or jet or whatever, that specialized kind of technical knowledge. They've got the kid with the, whatever it is kids collect nowadays. When I was a foster parent, it was Pokemon. This is about the year 2000. And these kids just loved Pokemon. That's the magician. It's collecting details. That's where I am. You can't be just that thing, but you do need to be that thing in some way. And you are. Just be aware of it. The last is the lover. And it's not the most fantastic name because we know what a lover is, but it's not that. It's somebody who opens their heart to the beauty of the universe. The way a warrior opens his heart, as it were, to the necessity of expedience, of getting things done. Well, it's not the opposite in any sense, but it is somebody who can appreciate the beauty, who knows how to be calm, who knows how to breathe, who sees somebody who needs help and offers it. Different than the king, because the king is a much larger. There's an individual, and it's not, I'm going to be this person's king. There's a song, the lover of my soul. That's what a lover is. That's the mature masculine archetypes, the 4 of them. And they're all important. And I would say they're all equally important. What happens is that we fall into 1 or 2 of them. We just are attracted. That's our temperament. And that's easy. Not easy to be healthy, but to be easy in that realm, that's easy. But then the others, the other 1, 2, 3, they need to be developed. And it takes practice on a daily basis to give yourself exercises, spiritual exercises, psychological exercises about what needs to be done in this realm. What thing I'm going to have to gird my loins. I'm going to have iron in my soul. I'm going to have to face this thing that I'm a little bit afraid of. I'm trepidatious of it. That's your warrior. And it may be you don't like to talk to strangers. All right, then at the store, you say hello. That's your warrior. Doing that, facing a challenge. The lover, to be kind. You're an impatient person. Come on, hurry up, get things done, hurry, go, go, go. That guy, you got to find your lover. And it's to be patient. So it's you're angry, you're upset, you take some breaths, you let it go, you smile. Because the other person has a point of view as well. And they're wrong, maybe, but they matter. And to value the fact that somebody else matters. That's all of these things, but it has its roots in the lover. So those are the 4 healthy archetypes, masculine, mature archetypes. There's a counterpart for women, the queen, but right now I'm talking about male. I've said mature. There are also the immature male archetypes for the boy. There are 4 of them, and they're direct counterparts of the 4 masculine, king, warrior, magician, lover. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this is those are the 4 healthy, but they're also unhealthy archetypes, and this is where people find themselves. And of the unhealthy, the imbalanced archetypes, each one of the healthy 4 has 2 shadows. The king has 2 shadows, one to the right, one to the left. One of the shadows is overly passive. So for the king, it would be the abdicator. He needs to be in charge here. But his answer is, oh, I don't know. No, let somebody else do it. No, I'm not sure. It's not really my responsibility. It is your responsibility. And you've abdicated. So that's the 2 passive. And then there's the 2 aggressive. And that's the tyrant. The abdicator, the tyrant. Well, we know about tyrants. Everything is, my father has passed away a few years ago. And there's a lot of unresolved issues that I have with him. But a couple of things. When he was alive, I was filled with rage. I never saw him, and I had ancient pain and ancient rage. And I would find myself, maybe you have done it too, but you're ranting alone by yourself, having these stale arguments about ancient pain. When he died, that day, all of that rage went away. But, because it was too late. There's nothing to be done. There was grief, but the rage went away. Very rarely it'll come back, surface up, but not anywhere near the way it used to be, and it's unresolved. I'm saying this because my father was a tyrant. Everything was his way. You weren't allowed to have an emotion that he didn't approve of. So I know about that guy very, very, very well, the tyrant. Maybe you know about that or the other, or maybe your father was very healthy. I was a good father. I was. So my son knows what the king is because I was benevolent. I was a blessing. And he saw a certain degree of warrior because I was a healthy father. As for the magician, that was very clear. Lover, a little more subtle, but lover of him. Lover of my son's soul. And I'm saying this very personal, but I talk about these personal things because they are illustrative. It's like the men's movement. This is the kind of thing that men would tell their deep, ancient, abiding pain. It's healthy. No, I'm doing this for you. I know all this. I don't need to say it again. There's no catharsis awaiting for me by saying this stuff, but there can be for you. So that's the king, the abdicator and the tyrant. Warrior has his 2 shadows, too passive, too aggressive, too violent. Magician has his 2 shadows, and lover has his 2 shadows. The 2 On all of them, it's too passive or it's too aggressive. Some other time, I'll talk about that because it's a little bit more into the weeds. Right now, what you would want to look at if you're unfamiliar with these concepts, the 4 big ones. Robert Moore wrote 4 books, well, more, but on this specific topic, and then a smaller, more general book on all 4 of them. But the 4 in question are all about the king. A whole book on the king. They're hard to come by. They're not in print anymore. Worth finding if you're deeply interested in it. So I'm saying this because young men are lost in a way they've never been lost before. I come from the tail end of what I had always thought was the stupidest generation, the baby boomers. And now every generation, every 5 years or 10 years, everybody thinks they need a name. Okay, the people who are coming up, the young people who are coming up in this cohort, I don't know, what chance do you have? What chance do you have? We have no rites of initiation, no way to usher you into manhood. People with their crazy, crazy, out of control emotions and no way to focus or channel them, except into some extreme thing. But there are a few good influences. Somebody gave me a book a few years ago, Jordan Peterson's book, and they gave it to me because they said, you are just like him. And in fact, we are very, very similar. He's a PhD, I have a Master of Science in Psychology, and just the stress on integrity, it's been important to me. So he is a very powerful example, and I completely understand the attraction. For me, I know that stuff. I know the paradigm, same paradigm. So he's got those details. And there are a few others. And then there are a few false teachers. The MMA fighter who now has a channel is a very, very big influence. And I've seen him once. I don't think that his understanding of masculinity and mine are the same, because you look at your relationship with women, and if there's anything that is superior and dismissive in one's attitude toward women, then run away. All right, so I'll leave it at that. There's a lot there. Have a great day.